Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to me ranking all of Taylor Swift's 6 albums that have come out thus far. This is not going to be a easy ranking for me. I mean, they're all something that I hold like near and dear to my heart. So like saying which Taylor album is better than the other, like it might change if I made this video on a different day. So just so you know. At the number 6 spot, we have Fearless. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that Fearless is a bad album. I mean, it has some good songs for sure. I like listening to it. It's just when you compare it to the other Taylor Swift albums, I'd say that it just has much fewer songs that I really like. Like, really, there's only 2 or 3 songs on there that I listen to most of the time, and the rest, like, if I want to listen to the album, I'll listen to them, but I just don't really care for them that much. Alright, number 5 is Taylor Swift, her debut album. I think this album has certain songs that I really like, definitely more than Fearless. I don't know who's calling me. Hello? What the hell do you want from me? Sorry that it's taken me a while to get my Game of the Year video out of the way. But here we go, my games of the year for 2017. So within the past month, I played games from 2017 that I hadn't played before. I played a lot of games, lots of ones that I didn't like, and some that I did like. And I have got my top 5 games of 2017 that I want to talk about, say which ones were the best, why they were the best, of course. But something fun that I thought to do, maybe it's not fun, but I'm going to have special awards as well. So not just the top 5 best games, but in between those we are going to do other ones. Actually, we are going to start with another one. So, here we go. The best game that I played in 2017 that didn't come out in 2017, or just best game from a previous year, goes to Dark Souls.
Oh god!
So, why was Dark Souls so good and the best non-2017 game that I played in 2017? Yeah, I know that's kind of a weird award to give, maybe, I don't know. Anyways, I live streamed this game, the whole thing, throughout the year of 2017, and it's just a really, really well-made, well-designed challenge, for the most part. There's a few levels and a few areas of the game that get a little bit bullshit, but overall, for the most part, it was a very fair challenge that was meaningful to overcome it, and it really made you feel good about yourself. Particularly the level in Orlando and the final boss, as well as the DLC, I thought were the best parts of the game for me. Not that there weren't other good parts, but those just sort of stood out the most to me. And yeah, I know it's cheesy to say that Dark Souls is challenging, but it's fair and it's rewarding, and like, I'm saying all those things. It's cheesy to say because that's what everyone says about Dark Souls, but like, it's true, that's just what the game is. So if I had to say something unique about Dark Souls that made it good for me personally, I guess, I think it would be this. It's that I played Bloodborne. I platinum Bloodborne before ever touching Dark Souls. So then when I went into Dark Souls, I was expecting it to be easier than when I played Bloodborne, because I'd already played a From Software game, so I got the basic gist of it. Turns out, Dark Souls for me was harder than Bloodborne, and I'd played Bloodborne, a similar game, before it. And I think that is just a really good quality that Dark Souls has. It's trying to be a challenge, and it doesn't fail at being that challenge even if you've played one of From Software's other challenging games before it. So yeah, best game from a previous year, Dark Souls. Alright, so the rest of the awards will go to games that actually came out in 2017. These are the games that came out in 2017 that I played, so just in case you're questioning why I'm not giving Legend of Zelda my Game of the Year award like everyone is, here's why. It's because I only played these games! Alright, time to count down my top 5 games. 5th best game goes to Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. Okay, now, sort of a disclaimer in a way. I feel like this game is almost not quite good enough to be on my Game of the Year list, but it's on there. This is definitely the worst out of the 5 games, but that being said, it's a very good game, I think, or else I wouldn't have put it on here. So, why is Hellblade one of the best games of 2017? Well, it tells a very meaningful story in a way that really uses sound design to immerse you in the world well, and it also has pretty solid, good gameplay throughout it. I would say that my real gripe with the game is that the puzzles and combat, although I don't dislike them, I think that they got a little repetitive, and some of them felt too samey, and the game got like a little bit boring, mostly in the first like third of the game. But then as it went on, I think it got a little more interesting. That being said, I think that the puzzles are really good and creative, and I think that the combat is also really good. Sometimes it feels like every fight is the same fight, like there is some enemy variety, and they give you more and more enemies as the game goes on, like to the point of where some of the later battles can just get like insanely difficult, and the game automatically sets the difficulty for you if you have the option turned on, which I did, which just makes the game even harder, because if you do good, it makes it hard, so there's that. By the way, that's something that I really like about this game, is the automatic difficulty setting and the no HUD. They're just things that help immerse you in the game, as well as the fantastic sound design. You have to play this game wearing a headset. You just, you won't get the full experience if you don't. Anyways, to sort of wrap up Hellblade, I think sound design is really good. Also, this is a indie game that is made with the production qualities of a AAA game, which I think is really impressive. Like, this is a great looking game too. Technologically looking, it does not look like an indie game, as well as it just has great visuals all around. And I think the best part of Hellblade were the sections of the game where it really felt different and very interesting, which I don't want to spoil what those things are. But yeah, it had a really trippy, dark, weird story that was actually kind of cool. Okay, the next award goes to the game that I wanted to like more, which simply means a game that I played that had certain aspects of it that I really liked, and it made me want to like the game more, but I just couldn't because it had flaws that really held it back a lot. And that game is Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. So this is a game that I played very early in 2017, and it really stuck with me for some reason throughout the whole year. It was just very memorable, yet I didn't really like it all that much. What I do really like about the game is the atmosphere and the exploration elements of the game. That was done fantastically, and that's what kept me playing through the game. It was really well done, so much so that I really wish the whole game was just as good as that. But unfortunately, there are scripted parts of the game that I just didn't like at all. I thought all of the boss fights were terrible. Okay, well, maybe 1 or 2 of them were okay. And the enemies are really, really repetitive. I don't think that combat was one of this game's strengths, and it had the same enemies over and over from start to finish, basically, which just got really, really boring by the end. So yeah, Resident Evil 7 doesn't make my Game of the Year list. Definitely not. Nowhere close. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I think it's a good game with some major flaws, but I really wish it was better. I really wish that I loved this game, but I don't. Alright, 4th best game of the year goes to What Remains of Edith Finch. This is a bit of a lesser known game, I think, although it has been getting some Game of the Year attention. So this is a interactive storytelling walking simulator type game, except it's actually done well. It's not just walking around and hearing dialogue or something stupid. So throughout this game, you experience stories of deaths in the Finch family, of how each person died, because everyone died in like weird ways. And you play through their deaths, and each one has different type of gameplay for it, and it's used in a really interesting way. I really can't show much of this game or say much of what it is without spoiling those parts of the game, but it's done very well. I think it has a overall very touching narrative, and it used interactions in a meaningful way to tell its story, unlike other similar games of that genre tend to do. And I wish I could say more about the game, but the thing is, I just don't think that many people have played it, and if I said anything more, it would spoil the game, so just go play it. Alright, next award goes to the most overrated game. This is a game that I think is getting and has got more attention than it deserves, and more critical acclaim than it deserves. What is this game? It is This game. It's getting way too many like end of the year award nominations and stuff. Like, it's not winning that much, but I'm seeing it on people's lists in like the top 10 or top 20, and it getting nominated for all these things. And I'm just like, what? Don't get me wrong, this is a good game, and it is also a Naughty Dog game. Naughty Dog has a certain level of quality that they put into all of their games, and that comes in storytelling, acting, motion capture, cutscenes, and smoothed out gameplay systems that just feel really good. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy is a good game. It's just not that good. And I think the reason why overall, if I just had to sum it up, is that unlike previous Naughty Dog games, it isn't really made with heart, or it doesn't feel like it has much heart to it. And it's really the first Naughty Dog game that I personally don't like that much. And I can say that while still saying that I think it's technically a good game. It has good gameplay, it has a good story, but the issue is that this is a meaningless story in the Uncharted series. This did not need to happen. It has characters that are less likable than in the other Uncharted games. And the biggest thing, I think, that drags down this game is that so many things in this game, so many of them, almost the entire game, are things that we've seen in previous Uncharted games or The Last of Us. It just shows that the Uncharted series, like, it was great while it was, but now it's sort of outliving its welcome. And it's becoming rehashed and just unnecessary. And I hope that they don't make more Uncharted games like this after it, at least not for like 5 or 10 years. Like, give it a break, and then come back once you have something new to do with it. Don't do the same thing over and over, but with less interesting characters. Alright, third best game and most underrated game, both of the awards go to the same game, goes to the Sexy Brutale. Okay, first off, let's talk about why this is the most underrated game. Have you heard about this game before? Do you know what this game is about? Do you know what it is? Maybe you do, and if so, then great. That's cool. But I feel like most people watching this video will probably have never heard of this game before, or maybe they've heard the name of the game, they don't even know what it is, and it's just sad, honestly. Like, not that it's your fault for not knowing, but this game isn't getting nearly enough attention. The Sexy Brutale is a beautiful, genius game. It is a puzzle game where you solve murders and try to stop them from happening. And you do this by watching them happen and then going back in time and doing that over and over until you finally solve it and stop it from happening. But your character cannot directly interact with the murder itself or any other characters during this. So it's sort of like a Groundhog Day murder mystery type thing, except the mystery isn't really about who did the murder. Like, you see the murder happen, it's about how to stop it. So it's a really creative game. I haven't seen anything like it before. Also, oh my god, the soundtrack is incredible. Basically, all of the best games on my list have fantastic soundtracks, but I think this might be the best one. And part of it is how it's synced up to the gameplay and the day as it goes on, as certain things happen. People get murdered. The music gets more and more intense as it gets closer to their death. Also, this game has what is genuinely a really well-constructed story, and I can't say anything about it without spoiling it. Also, I feel like I can't show too many of the puzzles and murders and deaths without, like, spoiling how to solve them and stuff, so I'll try to choose good gameplay to show. Also, this game has very good exploration elements, and it's one of the only 2 games of 2017 that I 100%ed. That's turning into something that I do less and less, but I did that in this game because I felt like it. Not many games make me feel like doing that, only ones that I really like. So this is the most underrated game of 2017, and I'm saying right now, you have to give it a chance, okay? It's like 10 hours or less long. It depends how long it takes you to solve the puzzles. And it is on like every current system. It's on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. It is the only game on my list that is on all 4 of those. So you have to play it. It's also super cheap. It's like 15 bucks or less if it's on sale or something. So get the Sexy Brutale, play it, give it a chance, please. I'm begging you, this game is amazing, and not enough people played it, not enough people are talking about it. It is awesome. And just to bring that down a note, I just want to talk about my one gripe with the game, which is simply that I feel like too many of the puzzles had sort of simple solutions. They weren't that bad, I just felt myself wanting something more out of the game. When it came to puzzle solutions, I wanted something like a bit more challenging and complicated, and I think that like the last 1 or 2 murders did that, but it was just that there was just those ones, so it finally builds up to that level, and then the game sort of ends. But still a fantastic game that you absolutely have to play because it is criminally overlooked. Alright, next we have the most disappointing game of the year, which goes to Nioh. Maybe this game should be my most overrated game. I thought about making it that, but the simple fact is that the combat mechanics in the game are actually really well done. They're really good. This game has a fantastic combat system. And you might be wondering why I'm saying this is the most disappointing game of the year, because like this wasn't something I was looking forward to that much before it came out, and it's a game that lots of people are saying are really good. And you know what, if they like the game, then that's great for them, but I just couldn't bring myself to like it in the end. So the game starts out really, really good. It starts out fantastic. If it had kept up how it was, the way that it started out, it could have possibly been my best game of this year. The issue is that the game just gets worse as it goes on, and then you realize that it's not as good as it is, and then it's just boring, and I wanted to stop playing it. So it's not disappointing because I was looking forward to it and then it came out and sucked. It's disappointing because I started playing it, thought it was fantastic, and then I kept playing it and it wasn't fantastic. It was actually kind of bad in certain ways. So let's talk about it. I think that the prologue and first level of this game are really well done. They are what made me love the game when I first started playing it. But then as the game goes on with each level, you sort of notice more and more things. First off, if you don't know what this game is, this is a Dark Souls-like game. Some might say it's a Dark Souls clone. Would I say that? Probably. And my issue with the game, it starts basically with the second level, is you realize that all of the enemies you're fighting, well, most of them, not every single one, but most of them, are the same enemies that were in the previous level. And you think that's sort of odd, but you keep playing because it's been good so far. And then you get to the third level, and you realize that they have the same exact enemies still with a few new ones. And then you get to the fourth level, same thing. And then I got to the fifth level, same enemies, plus the fifth level visually looks exactly the same as the second level. So at that point, I just stopped playing the game. And I think what Team Ninja didn't realize about Dark Souls and why it's so good is it's not just the difficult combat. It's also how creative the game's world is and how many different enemies you fight, and how it has a non-linear story and like optional areas and levels that are linked together and all these things that I think they sort of missed the point on exactly what made Dark Souls good. And they nail the combat, but they don't really get the rest. Something that I mentioned is the non-linearness of Dark Souls. And in Nioh, there are linear levels that you play in a order. They're all the story missions, and they tell you that they are. They tell you, like, okay, you finish this one, then you play this one, then you play this one, then you play this one. And it's like, okay, but like in Dark Souls, there are many optional levels that you just find, and the game doesn't tell you which ones are optional exactly. You just sort of have to figure it out. And in Nioh, all of the optional levels and content are just rehashed things from the main levels, which themselves turn into rehashes of the previous main levels. Also, something that I do have to criticize with the combat is that there's really very few weapons. There's like 5 actual weapons in the game when it comes to like movesets, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And each one has 3 stances that you can use it in to make it faster or slower and have different moves. The issue is that early on in the game I found the weapon that I liked and wanted to use, and I didn't feel like using any of the other weapons. I just kept using that, and I kept using it in the same stance. And then I went on YouTube and watched other people play the game, and it turns out that they were all using that same weapon in that same stance, which is the Kusarigami. I know I said that wrong. Something like that. It's like the ball and chain weapon in the high stance. That's all that anyone was using, I swear. So I don't think the game did a good job of having variety. And that is overall why it was the most disappointing game, because it started out fantastic and then it was boring. Alright, second best game of the year goes to Horizon Zero Dawn. I thought this game was going to be my first best game of the year, ever since I played it back in February, because this game was just fantastic. I 100%ed the game. This is the second game that I did so with, and I was just glued to this game from start to finish. There are so many things done right in this game. So many. First off, the world is very original. It takes things that aren't original, such as robots and tribal things, but it mixes them in a way that hasn't been done before, and because of that, it feels original. It's a very, very interesting world with lots of mystery, and the mystery aspect of the story, I think, is handled really well. There are very good payoffs to those mysteries, as well as gameplay is integrated very well into the mystery aspect. The combat in this game is absolutely fantastic, with the robots. I'd say my biggest gripe about the game is that human combat is very simple, and I would be fine with it being as simple as it is if it wasn't in the game as much. The thing is, it's in the game, like, a lot. And one thing that the Frozen Wilds DLC actually did better than the main game was having less human combat. Which, by the way, that was a good DLC. I don't think it blew my mind in any way. It was really just more of what the game was, which is very good. And it added to the overall lore and mystery in a way that I thought was good. Also had some new enemies to fight. So yeah, robot combat in this game is awesome. It's action-packed, but it can also be slow and stealthy and strategic. And I think the main aspect that makes combat great is there is a really good variety of robots for you to fight, and each one has their own weaknesses and different parts that are best to shoot and different ways to take it down. And then you fight them in combinations with each other, and it's just absolutely fantastic. The open world aspect of this game, I think, is done really well. They don't have too many of each thing to do, to the point where it gets boring and like tedious if you want to finish everything. I think everything felt meaningful throughout the whole experience of 100%ing this game. There is a variety of different environments that the game will take place in throughout the map. I know I'm probably just showing gameplay from like one of them here, so don't think that's it. And the mystery aspect of the story is not the only aspect to it. There is a very heartfelt, character-driven narrative also going on there, which, you know, I don't want to spoil or anything. And yeah, it was a really great game. It was an open-world game that felt fresh in ways that you maybe wouldn't have thought it would be, just based on how the game is sort of built, but when you play it, it just is great. That sounded terrible. This is why I don't work for a games journalism site. Let me revise that last part. Horizon Zero Dawn is great because it's just like Dark Souls. There we go. There we go. Alright, we have 2 awards left to give. Can you guess what they are, maybe? Alright, anyways. First up, we have Worst Game of the Year. So, in 2017, I think what we really saw with AAA games was not only laziness when it came to what was put into the games, but most importantly, the rise of the microtransactions. Microtransactions being put into $60 games, even ones that are just single player. That being said, this game isn't just single player. The worst game of 2017 is For Honor. You probably thought I was going to say Star Wars Battlefront 2. Don't get me wrong, that game was terrible, but I don't think it was quite as bad. So why is For Honor the worst game? Let's first talk about microtransactions. Now, they are in the game, and they will let you unlock characters and like move sets that you can use online that would take a very long time to unlock if you didn't pay the real money for them. I don't think this game has the worst microtransactions in any game this year, but it's worth mentioning as one of the reasons why it's the worst game. I think microtransactions, like, there's no one game where they're necessarily the worst. I mean, you could say Star Wars Battlefront 2, but they're really bad in like any AAA game if not done right. Anyways, let's talk about the sort of more relevant reasons why For Honor is such a terrible game. Something that I just want to say is one of the signs of how bad the game is it is a multiplayer game, which are meant to be, you know, like long-lasting games that people keep on playing throughout, you know, the next year or two or something. And it has almost been 1 year since the game came out, and have you heard anyone still talking about it? Me neither. So this is a melee combat multiplayer game that also has a single-player campaign, technically. I will talk about the combat system first. The combat system, on paper, isn't that bad, but the way that it's executed in the game is just really bad, of course. So you block left, right, and up, as well as that is where you can hit enemies, and you have to like try to, you know, not hit where they're blocking and block where they're hitting. It sounds like a good system. The issue is it's not responsive, and there are times, and like I have proof of this. I proved it, except I don't have the gameplay recordings anymore. But there are times when you will block something and the game knows that you're trying to block it, and your character will not block it. And it's not just some sort of like non-blockable attack that you're not blocking. It's a normal attack, and you push the stick towards the direction to block it before it hits you. The game even notices that you're doing this, but you still get hit sometimes, because that's just the way the game is. Not only that, but this combat system works very good for locking on and fighting one person at a time. And most of the time you are not fighting one person at a time. It gets complicated and you can't block attacks like one coming from this way and one coming from this way at the same time. And since this is a multiplayer game, that makes it even worse, because if you aren't in a 1v1 scenario, if it's you as one versus two or more people, then you are probably going to lose simply because you cannot effectively block two people at the same time in this game. Not only that, but in multiplayer, there are certain moves that can be used that cannot be blocked, and there are ones that technically can be blocked, but players use them in ways to where they spam them so that you just can't block anything, and it's just completely bullshit how it's designed. Anyways, the campaign mode is terrible and tacked on, and it feels like something that wouldn't really need to be there, but they put it there because they felt they had to charge $60 for the game. It is completely uncreative, and the gameplay in it is awful. The story in it is not even a story, I don't think. Technically, So let's talk about the multiplayer. This is a multiplayer-focused game that has a campaign in it because they felt they had to have a campaign. So, is the multiplayer good? Not really. So, for multiplayer modes, how many multiplayer modes do you think this $60 game has? It has 2. At least when it came out, when I played it, it had 2 game modes. There is one game mode where it's a set number of players versus the same number of players, and it's just a deathmatch basically. That can be 1v1, 2v2, I think 3v3 or 4v4, but it's the same game mode, just with different sizes of teams where you fight each other. Now, the 1v1 game mode wouldn't be that bad if it wasn't for the spamming of certain moves, because one-on-one combat can actually work once in a while in this game. The other ones, if you do not stick with a teammate or something, or I mean, even if you do, it'll just get complicated and crowded, and God, it just doesn't work. And then the second game mode is a Call of Duty domination type game mode where you like capture 3 points. This game mode also has NPC characters that are like weak and easy to kill in it, and the issue is just simply the complicated combat of when it's more than just 1v1, and plus, you know, 1v1 doesn't always work, like I said. And yeah, that's the thing. This game has terrible content, and it doesn't have that much of it. This game should not be $60, and it's absolutely insane that they charge microtransactions on top of that. I think it just represents the bad in video games of 2017. Which, by the way, there were a lot of bad video games in 2017. I disliked more of the games that I played than games that I liked. But anyways, that's For Honor. Now, the best game of the year goes to...
What the hell?
Our records don't say anything about a machine like this.
This is a game I played very recently, and this is the reason why it took me this long to finally put this video up, is because I wanted to first finish the game. And I think the main reason why this is the #1 game for me and why it's so great is because this game is weird. It is weird as hell, man. Or woman. And I mean that it's weird in the best way possible. You will never be bored with this game. It's always giving you something new, whether that's in gameplay or in story. Something new and odd and strange and very, very interesting. And when I say that it's weird, it's not like it's a random jumble of things it throws at you. Like, these things are creatively thought out and like thoughtfully put together in a very meaningful way. And I really feel like I can't show much of this game without spoiling it, so I'm just showing like a little bit of the first few sections of the game. This is a action game that is kind of open world, but it's not too focused on the open world aspect. There's third-person melee combat and shooting, but whenever the game feels like it, it will switch the camera angle and turn it into either a top-down, like shooting action game, or a side-scroller, and then sometimes there's like ship combat in certain parts, and it just constantly mixes it up. There's like a ton of combos that you can do with the weapons that all just feel really good. This game is pretty easy at the start of it, but it ends up getting quite challenging by the end. Which, speaking of the end of the game, without spoiling things, I have to talk about how it handles endings. The first time that you play this game, if you don't do too many side missions, it'll probably take you like 10 or less hours, and it'll have an ending and overall feel pretty normal while still being kind of weird just because it's near. But then, if you play the game a second time on the same save file, it's different from the first time. It's not the same exact game. I don't want to spoil how, but it mixes things up, and it gets weirder, and it shows more parts of the story that you didn't see the first time. And then, not only that, but you can play the game a third time, and there's still new content, very different from the first two playthroughs, and God, it's just so great. I really can't talk about it too much without spoiling it, but when the third playthrough ends, that is when the game like actually ends. So if you like this game and you're playing it, make sure to play it 3 times on the same save file, because if you don't, you're just not going to get the full experience of what's meant to be played. I know that sounds really weird, but that's the thing. This game is weird in the best way possible. It's always giving you something different, something new. You will never lose interest or be bored. Also, this is probably the longest game I've ever played, not counting optional parts of it. Speaking of optional parts and side missions, I didn't play like that many of them because I wanted to get through the game. Also, they sort of weren't that interesting. I liked most of the ones that I did play, but there were a lot of fetch quest type things. So I think the open world and like side quest portions of this game maybe aren't its strongest asset. But that being said, you could play through this game without ever touching them, which is almost what I did, and it'll just be awesome. So if the side missions don't seem good, you don't have to play them. I think that Horizon Zero Dawn did side missions and open world content better than this game, but that this game does the overall core experience better, I guess I'd say. And something that I want to say about the game's story, because I haven't talked about it that much because I can't, basically, but it's about what it means to be human. And it does it in a very interesting way, without having that many characters who are actually humans. They're mostly all robots, and there's like 2 different types of robots. And it's just really fantastic what they do with it, and how they like also break the 4th wall in certain parts, and how they do it. It's just great, but I can't say anything more really without spoiling it. So yeah, there we go. I'm glad to finally be done with 2017. I'm like almost 20 days late with it. I don't know when I will upload this, so probably a few more than 20 days late with it by the time you see this, but I'm glad to be done. And yeah, there were 5 games there I really liked. I think you should play all of them, but if you can only play one, play the Sexy Brutale, because it is a game that just needs to be played. It needs more love. So yeah, thank you for watching this video, guys, and I look forward to 2018. And the #1 Taylor Swift album goes to Red. Every song in Red is fantastic, except maybe 1 or 2 of them. I really like Red. Every song is great, like I had previously said a few seconds ago. Please listen to Taylor Swift's album Red. It is her best album. Thank you for watching. Press the like button and share this video with your mother. Subscribe.